My entitled pastor lies to the entire church and has been using church funds to sleep around with other women as well as other nefarious activities behind all of our backs. So I decided I was getting revenge. So I got all of his records together, organized everything for his wife as well as the other church leaders to see, forcing him to not only resign, but causing his wife to divorce him, as well as ruining his reputation in the process. And I've never been more satisfied to take someone down. Here's what happened. I used to be very religious. At the end of that period in my life, I became involved with a new church that was pastored by a charismatic young pastor who seemingly had everything going for him. But this guy was a greedy jerk. He was way too greedy. And as the saying goes, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And trust me when I say this, Pastor Hog got slaughtered. My wife and I were looking for a church. An old friend invited us to a new church that was energetic and full of friends. We started attending regularly and eventually became involved with the leadership of the church. After a while, I started to become uneasy around the pastor. The way he communicated with people just rubbed me the wrong way. I slowly realized that he was a manipulator as well as a compulsive liar, quick with an overzealous compliment but slow to explain himself when issues arose. It started with little things, like lifting sermons wholesale from the internet without doing any personal research. Then, a habit of when the small church couldn't afford to pay a full-time salary, as well as being fired from every entry-level part-time job he started with no good explanation as to why. Soon enough, the sermons demanding church members give more money became more frequent. He then refused to find part-time work on his own. This all despite the fact that he lived in a much nicer home than any of the church members. And this was gifted to him from a church member in a previous church. And he seemed to live a very comfortable life. My wife and I eventually took over the church accounting, and we were appalled by the frivolous spending and mounting credit card debt, while accruing an insane interest rate. I started to pore over the credit card statements, some going back a couple of years. It was insanity. Credit card cash withdrawals, clearly personal expenses charged to the church, $200 for a massage on Christmas Eve. I mean, why is he putting his wife's last-minute Christmas gifts on the church card? And then one day I fired up the church computer and a messenger app popped up. 2 clicks and I was confronted with messages to women in which he propositioned them to come meet him in his super legitimate business office in a shiny high-rise. And their meeting was a little bit more than cordial, as they spent some serious quality time together, if you know what I mean. But when I confronted him about this mess, things really popped off from there, as this guy turned out to be the biggest weirdo I've ever met in my life. I eventually confronted him about the messages and he fessed up, admitting he sent the messages and had never done it before, and it was a mere lapse in his discretion. He said he would cut it out, no big deal, and I just believed him, and I didn't tell anyone. Well, a few months later, a young unmarried musician in the church became pregnant. He made a huge spectacle about it and kicked her out. It turns out, in his opinion, we couldn't have the blight of this specific sin on display at his church. The petty lies turned into more elaborate lies, mostly about how church money was spent, but also what he was doing with all of his time. Things were out of hand. I sat down with him and his wife to go through the credit card statements line by line, just to work out which charges the church would pay. I said to him, "We can't pay for a Christmas massage for your wife." And that's when his wife said, "What? He didn't give me any massage. We can't afford that." Fast forward, and again, one Sunday morning, I fired up the church computer and I noticed that all the internet history had been wiped. I became suspicious, and after a discussion with a couple church leaders, I began monitoring traffic on the computer, which was church property, by the way. Since he was an employee of the church had the right to monitor the computer. Within a matter of days, it became apparent that he was cruising the net just to look for ladies of the night, if you know what I mean. To his credit, it seemed like he was looking for someone who would give a discount. He had a church-provided cell phone, and I had access to the account. A quick check confirmed a pattern. He hits one of these ladies of the night's ads, a phone call to the corresponding number, it's just a 1-minute call, and then another ad, another number, and another minute. He would repeat this pattern over and over again, and then there would be no calls for a day or two. In the course of 7 days, there were 4 distinct episodes following the same pattern. Looking at the past phone records, I was able to work out that he had been doing it for years. And this is right about the time when I caught him trying to pretend to be some kind of successful businessman on messenger apps. This guy lied right to my face. He played me for a fool and I swallowed it whole. I felt like a total idiot. I checked up on him during work hours and he wasn't in the church office. He wasn't at home with his wife, and she said that he was at church, but that definitely wasn't true either. This guy guilted a bunch of people who looked up to him into giving him more money while then turning around to spend that money on ladies of the night. He kicked out some pregnant teenager because he didn't want that sin on display. All the while he's spending quality time with other women while parading around like some business mogul, with the cherry on top of getting a secret massage on Christmas Eve, just to then put it on the Christmas credit card. All of that wrapped together truly was unforgivable for me. I brought together all the records I could get my hands on, and I organized them all. Excel spreadsheets with times and phone numbers, printouts of the ads complete with full color pictures, lists of suspicious credit card charges, and I color coordinated everything. It was an unimpeachable record that the slipperiest of liars would not be able to explain away. I contacted the church leaders and shared what I found. We called a meeting and confronted him. He immediately went into damage control. He resigned on the spot and begged us not to tell his wife or anyone else. Well, that was absolutely not going to happen. I sent my masterpiece to his wife and walked her through it. Anytime he fed her a lie, I set her straight up with raw data. She kicked him out, filed for divorce, and left the state. The church disbanded, and he disappeared, eventually filing for bankruptcy. And I haven't been to church since. I still Google his name from time to time. After a couple of years, I got a hit about him working at some low levels in some church. Every time I would check, he would be at a different church. I've been tempted to dust off my folder of destruction, but I figure he's been through enough. Wow, that's honestly crazy to me. People really put their trust in church leaders, and they really look to them for like solace and other aspects of their lives. So the fact that this pastor would betray the trust of their entire church, not only to use church funds however they want, but also to literally sleep around and cheat on their wife, all under the guise of being this holy person, is in my opinion so hypocritical and so awful. Like, why would you blow up your family and ruin your reputation while also masquerading as something that you're not? Like, seriously, this guy needs to change lines of work, because being a pastor or some kind of church leader and doing stuff like that is unacceptable, and it shows that he's absolutely not practicing what he's preaching. And it's also hugely ironic that this guy kicked out the young lady who was pregnant, while he himself has done much worse. So good for the original poster for taking this guy down. He seriously had it coming, and the way he was acting was so inappropriate. And if it wasn't for the original poster, this guy very likely could still be getting away with this. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My new army captain that was over my section tried to make my life a living nightmare, but as a result of trying to boss me around and make me abandon my post, she ends up getting relieved from duty and completely ruins her career. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, I used to be an armorer in the US Army. Basically, I was the person in charge of securing and maintaining all the weapons. I was stationed overseas at a base that only had one arms room, and I was the guy who ran it. So instead of just being responsible for the weapons in my unit, I was responsible for all the weapons in the entire post. On paper, that's a job that's supposed to be done by an E6 with a 2-person support staff. In reality, the position was chronically short-staffed. It was just me as an E4 doing the job of 3 people. Because the position was critical to the operations of a bunch of different units, including things like special forces, where everything about them is classified by default, and joint operations with the Navy and Air Force, and a few foreign militaries who were working with the United States, I had to get a security clearance that was higher than everyone else in my unit. As far as I knew, there were only 4 other people on the post with clearance high enough to do what I did, and they were all officers too, by the way. This led to some amusing situations where I was accidentally called for security briefings that were way above my pay grade. That sucked because I was on call all the time, and I had to go to work anytime anyone needed a weapon. Being on call was supposed to be a duty rotation, but I was the only one who could do it, so I slept in the arms room a lot. I wanted to make sure I had as little to do as possible, so I got very good at my job. How good, you might ask? During an army-wide review of the entire supply chain, my post was found to be the best-run arms room in the entire army. I won a medal and everything for that. Then we had a change in command, and the new captain hated that I didn't have to go to training exercises because I wasn't allowed to be more than 30 minutes away from the arms room ever. Well, the new captain was absolutely determined to take me on a training mission. She had somehow gotten into her head that I was a slacker, which I absolutely was, but only because I was efficient, and I was ticked off that I never got to leave the base. So she drew up a bunch of paperwork to sign the arms room over to the supply sergeant. I refused to sign it. Next, she tried to sign the arms room over to the company commander, but I refused to sign because that commander had become a friend of mine, so I knew he was required to leave the base weekly for security briefings. Finally, she tried to sign the arms room over to our company supply lieutenant. I tried to explain that the lieutenant doesn't have high enough clearance, but she just cut me off. She said she was tired of my excuses. Then she ordered me to sign sign and threatened me with an Article 15 I wrote under duress on the paperwork. She didn't even look at the signature. So I sent an email to the warrant officer who was in charge of logistics for the area, and he was the guy who had given me the award I mentioned earlier. So he was especially angry when he found out what was going on. I then went on this awful little weekend training exercise and basically enjoyed my vacation. That sequence of events happened on Friday afternoon. The chief didn't get my email until Monday morning. Well, as you probably can guess, on Monday afternoon, my captain was relieved of command. I eventually had to testify at her disciplinary hearing. My second favorite part of the whole experience was the supply lieutenant, who got a slap on the wrist, by the way, for inadvertently obeying illegal orders because he hadn't learned the regulations before signing. He said, "Is it like that for you all the time? This has to change." But my favorite part overall of this entire situation was the full bird colonel in charge of the hearing asking my former commander the following: "Your soldier was awarded for being the best at his job in the entire army. After he refused your orders the first few times, why didn't you start asking questions?" So overall, it was really satisfying to see her get exactly what she deserved. How awful is that? Imagine trying to do your job exactly as it's described, and then someone comes in and says, "No, you're just lazy." She was probably really jealous that this guy didn't leave the base, and he wasn't going on any of these training exercises, which I can imagine are probably really strenuous, and they're probably really complicated. So she thought she was picking an easy target and tried to force him to come along. But honestly, in the end, she got exactly what she deserved, because the way she was acting was incredibly inappropriate, and no one deserves to get treated like that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for taking my little cousin out with me and my friend after nobody attended his birthday party? Here's what happened. So I'm a 16-year-old male, and I had plans to hang out at an arcade with my friend by the name of Alex. Alex is not his real name, and this was all supposed to happen at 2:00 p.m. Meanwhile, my 7-year-old cousin's birthday party was scheduled from 12 o'clock to 5:30. While we waited for my hangout time with Alex, I decided to help my aunt with the preparation, especially with a cake and cupcakes and setting up the snacks on the table. But honestly, the best part was spending time with my adorable little cousin. We were both super hyped up for his party, but the fact that absolutely nobody showed up to his party is insane. We waited for an entire hour, and all the decorations, treats, and snacks were just sitting there untouched. Seeing him overwhelmed with negative emotions made me incredibly sad. I didn't want this day to be ruined for him, so I took matters into my own hands and called up Alex and asked if we could go to the arcade earlier and bring my cousin along with us. We had an amazing time there, and he ended up feeling so much better. When we returned home with my cousin though, my mom and aunt were yelling at me, claiming that I messed up. They insisted that my cousin would have had a better time with family. Look, I get it. We would have spent some family time together, but in that moment, all I wanted was to ensure that my cousin's special day wasn't completely ruined. He had an absolute blast at the arcade, and I genuinely don't see how I'm the one in the wrong here. I mean, my cousin doesn't even have many friends, and he only invited people he felt comfortable with, including some of his supposed best friends. So you can imagine just how heartbroken he was when no one showed up. So am I the jerk here? Did I actually mess up by making my cousin tag along with me and my friend? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. Your cousin's birthday party completely blew up in his face, and he had nobody show up to his birthday party. Like, that must be an awful feeling, especially for a 7-year-old. So the fact that you had the insight to be like, okay, come with me to the arcade with my friend, let's go have some fun. That, in my opinion, was a really good move. It shows that you really care about your cousin, and you really wanted him to have a good birthday. The original poster goes on to say that yes, they asked an adult before they took their cousin with them, and they asked their mom, who also told the aunt. So it's not like they weren't aware that this cousin was going with the original poster, but it's so weird that they switched it up as soon as they got back. So no, you're not the jerk in this situation. Your family is being weird for literally no reason, and you did this kid a favor because his birthday party fell like a lead balloon, and you made what would have been an awful day a little bit better just by inviting him to come along. My sister demands that my husband and I pay $22,000 towards her wedding, claiming that simply because we have the money, we should then just give her the money so that she can have a wedding that she likes. But my husband and I refused, and now she, as well as the rest of the family and friends, are all calling us bad people, and I'm honestly now not sure what to do. To start things off, I'll say that my parents are already offering to chip in for her. They didn't chip in for me, even though they offered, and I rejected them, as my husband paid for the entire thing. He's very wealthy, and so are his side of the family, so it was a very big, extravagant wedding. My sister was one of my bridesmaids, and I paid for her bridesmaid dress and paid for everything. I spent hours organizing my wedding and spent a lot of money and organization preparation to make it the best day ever. My sister helped with my weekend with organization, but not financially. My best friend and the maid of honor helped me the most with everything. Anyways, my sister now is getting married and she wants my husband to pay for it. It's going to be $22,000 that she wants us to pay for. We told her that that's ridiculous and she would have to try and pay for her own wedding or get our parents to help out. She then got angry at me, saying that my wedding was 1,000 times more expensive and that I had the money and wasn't being fair for her. Her friends and her husband have been saying that we were snobby and that we were treating them badly and we won't pay for anything towards their wedding when my sister helped out so much with mine. I've even gotten messages from some of her friends calling me an awful person. Someone even said that apparently she married her husband for the right reasons and not for money, which really upset me. I don't know if there was anything I could do or if I'm in the wrong for refusing that. What should I do? First off, if you haven't done it already, I would block the friends that are messaging you. Those people are idiots and they really need to mind their own business. Also, your sister is being really obnoxious here. Who just walks up to their sibling and says, okay, I need $22,000, and by the way, if you don't do it, I'm gonna slander your name to the rest of the family. Like seriously, what are you doing? That's a lot of money no matter who you are, even if you do have that kind of money. Like what kind of nerve does this lady have to seriously walk up to your husband and demand $22,000? If she really wanted to ask for money, at least ask for something smaller than that. Because at the end of the day, it's her wedding. Why on earth should you be forced to pay for her wedding when she didn't even help out financially with yours? Yeah, she helped out by organizing stuff, but literally anybody can do that. If we're looking at this logistically, she didn't do anything for your wedding. That is honestly, in my opinion, way too much money. And the fact that she would try to spring this on you and act like this is going to be your fault if you can't pony up the money honestly shows her true colors. So no, you're not the jerk in this situation. Your sister really does sound incredibly entitled, and just because your husband's rich doesn't mean that you two have to finance her wedding. My fiancé is banned from every major bank and payment processor, but tells me it's because of a conspiracy against him. And now I'm at a place where I seriously don't know what to do. My fiancé works from home and he has always been very secretive regarding his finances. He has repeatedly told me that it's not my place to know how he makes his money, but he has briefly mentioned that it apparently relates to cryptocurrency. Needless to say, he makes a lot of money doing just this. One of the main reasons that I've been trying to get him to be more honest with me about his finances is that I found out that he is banned from quite literally every major bank and every major payment processor. It's so bad to the point where 3 months ago, he tried to open a personal checking account with a small local bank, and they at first allowed him to do it, but then they closed his account after the first week for the reason that my fiancé still won't tell me. The whole situation was a mess because he had something like $600,000 in that account, and they had to investigate the funds for over 3 months before they were finally released last Friday. This situation was kind of my breaking point regarding his financial secrecy. I told him that I needed him to be more honest with me regarding his finances, especially since we're going to be getting married in 2 months. He told me some disturbing things that sound like delusional conspiracies that you might hear online. Basically, he said it was the deep state and the elite who control the global banking system, and they are apparently out to get him because he's in the process of exposing them to the world. When he was saying these things, I was waiting for him to tell me that he was joking, but he never did. And when he was done talking, I just stared at him. Here's the thing, my fiancé is not some crazy internet supporter of these theories, and I can list so many things that are absolutely great about him. He is someone I want to be with forever, and I have never felt this in love with anyone before, but this rapidly devolving situation is breaking my mind. I keep asking myself how this will work once we're married, and if he will ever finally become fully open with me once we're married, since perhaps he will trust me more then. What should I do? This is a major red flag in my opinion. First off, the original poster went on to say that they've both known each other for 8 months, and they've been engaged for 2 months overall. And that honestly just sounds super sketchy. It doesn't sound like he's being totally honest with you, and it seems like he's intentionally leaving out some details that would be really important for you to know. Like, where is he getting this money from? Sure, he says it's from cryptocurrency, but why can he not make a bank account? Like, seriously, what is going on? If I was in your shoes, there's no way I would marry him unless I knew this financial information up front first and foremost. And also, this talk about the deep state and the global elite being after him or something like that is seriously crazy to me. So hopefully you can figure this one out, because this guy is being super sketchy, and you have a right to know exactly what's going on well before you get married. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out in the description below and subscribe.